let's get into our takeaways because that's what's important from the game on Saturday. Win, loss, draw, doesn't matter. What did you take away from the football game? And Sam Flannel, for me, I think I learned a ton about this football team and their resiliency because they went into Dallas, a environment in which the Cowboys average 40 a game. They blow out every team they face in Dallas, including the Eagles, and the Lions went toe-to-toe with them defensively, which is really the most impressive part of this entire football game is what they did defensively to this high-powered Cowboys offense. I know CeeDee Lamb got his, and he had a hell of a game, but really, if you look at the box score, they allowed 7 points in the first half, and that was off a missed sack, should have been a safety from Derek Barnes. So if you look at it like that, and that was an 80, 90-yard pass, a big play to CeeDee Lamb, touchdown. But besides that, they played great in the first half. Second half, they allowed 13. I think the defense was really the biggest part of what happened on Saturday. Yeah, the offense, they hung in there, they battled. It's tough when you're running the football, and for the majority of the time, they're getting tackled in the backfield. It was just not a great game to me from this offensive line. It is what it is. You're not going to have games like you typically have where you're just running the football effortlessly on every single defense. There's going to be times where you're going to struggle to run the football. It is what it is. But I think the defense is one of my bigger takeaways. And then you go to offensively, right? And like I said, they hung in there. Dallas, at least their pass rush, I mean, Jared was only sacked once. So in pass protection, I think they did a good job of getting the ball out. Now the problem is, and this is where, this could be an issue in the playoffs. Now you have to see with a defense like this, they like to take the football away. And Jared had 2 interceptions. And I get they were both great defensive plays. Don't get me wrong. The first one, it was a jump. It looked like basically a screen play. And the route was jumped. The second one, it was Laporta to Laporta, and it was a great defensive play. But regardless, you can't turn the ball over twice. You just can't. Especially when you're playing a team that's just as good as you. Oh, like the room for error is very small, and when you're turning the football over, you're immediately, especially with a defense like the Lions, and they've been playing really well, and they still held up, you cannot turn the football over. That is, and again, those are on Jared Goff. I can't just sit here and excuse him and say, well, they're just great defensive plays. You can't turn the football over. Jared Goff didn't have his best game. He almost had a 50% completion percentage, so you just can't do it. 31.9 quarterback rating. So defensively was one of my biggest takeaways, Sam, because if the defense can play like that on the road, I have faith this offense can bounce back. I think Jared can bounce. These guys can. We know that's not typically what they show. They're a top 5 offense. So if you get that type of defense in the postseason, they're going to win more than a playoff game. I'll tell you that. And I think the very floor is winning a playoff game because that defense, and you're getting help back. Liam McNeil, C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back. I love what I saw out of the defense, and credit to AG for his adjustments as well. Iffy, welcome. The guy just keeps making plays. You're starting to see guys just continue to get better, and that's what it's all about here. I mean, Jack Campbell, although they missed a call on him, I thought he had a pretty good game. So overall, the number one thing for me, I'll start with it, is that defense, because I'm telling you one thing, they need that defense come postseason time, Sam Flannel.
That was very well said about the defense because they played one of their best games of the year without a shadow of a doubt. The problem is, and here's where I kind of want to turn the page on the whole ref stuff and kind of break down the game a little bit more. I remember in the post-game show, and it was probably the most explosive moment of them all. Terrell from FL, one of our favorite people who calls in, sometimes he hits home runs and sometimes he strikes out, but he had a very heated conversation with Stick. And I know the end result of that phone call was Stick basically, according to most, roasting him. But I thought Terrell from FL made up had some good points in that one. He pointed to some things that the Lions could have done that would have ensured that maybe it wouldn't have even come down to that. And of course, Stick was he wasn't completely excusing the loss, but he was definitely excusing Jared Goff and was definitely just kind of saying, oh, this is actually a good thing. We can look at it as positive. And I thought, and here's the point of all this, and here's why I want to bring this up. Because the refs, obviously, they did make an egregious mistake at the end, or mistake. I'm not I'll just say that, an egregious mistake. But here's the reality of the situation. Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions. The Lions had 4 possessions in Cowboys territory in the first half and only managed 3 points. The Lions only scored 19 points in the game. They gave up 227 yards to CeeDee Lamb, and I would say a borderline MVP caliber performance from Dak. If it wasn't for Lamar Jackson going crazy this weekend, you might think that Dak Prescott had elevated into one of the MVP frontrunners, but he'll still get some votes. And, oh, by the way, it wasn't just the first half in which the Lions had 4 possessions in Cowboys territory and only managed 3 points. They also forced 2 back-breaking turnovers by the Cowboys, 1 interception on 3rd and 4 in Lions territory by Iffy, and, of course, CeeDee Lamb fumbling the ball out of bounds, and they were down 7-3 at halftime. And, oh, by the way, when it was 17-13 and Jared Goff had a chance to lead the Lions down the field to where they could score and it wouldn't come down to a 2-point conversion, he throws a bad interception. So the reality is that in some ways the Lions offense let the defense down. I get it. The defense gave up a lot of yards to CD, gave up a big day to Dak Prescott, but at the end of the day, we kind of knew that this was coming, and we've seen the Lions win some games in which they have given up big games to guys like Chris Olave and Justin Jefferson in recent weeks, for example. But the Lions, they forced a couple of turnovers, and that's what you need to do in these games. They're never going to shut anybody down, but they have to be bend but don't break in a lot of ways that they were. And they also benefited from Aiden Hutchinson having one of the best games of his career. I would say the best game of his career, but it was the offense, it was the mistakes. And oh, by the way, even when, and this is just me, even when they missed that 2-point conversion, I wouldn't have gone, or the 2-point conversion was taken away from them. I misspoke. I would not have went for it. I would have not went for 2 from the 7-yard line. Fortunately for them, Micah Parsons jumped, and then they got an easier. They had it from like the 3.5 or the 4, but then they throw a pass to James Mitchell. For some reason, for reason only God, your mama, and me knows. I get it. Sam Laporta was hobbled and Brock Wright was out, but Amon-Ra was in there, Jahmyr Gibbs was in there, David Montgomery was in there, Josh Reynolds was in there. You couldn't have come up with something better than that. And oh, by the way, that was a bad ball by Jared Goff, but James Mitchell probably still could have caught it. The reality is that as much as we want to complain about the refs, and damn, did they screw us, there was a lot of things that the Lions could have done better. And oh, by the way, are we 100% sure that the Cowboys wouldn't have drove it down the field and led and kicked a game-winning field goal? I get it. There wasn't a lot of time left, but if they get a touchback, Dak Prescott could complete like a 30-yarder to CD, maybe another 10-yarder, and then they have the best kicker in the league. I'm not saying that would have happened, and I think we would all feel a lot better if the 2-point conversion would have been allowed to stand and the Cowboys would have just made that drive. We would have said it was fair and square, but still, a lot of people are just, I also don't agree with the whole, like, we actually won the game. It just doesn't reflect in the standings. I think they probably would have if it wasn't for that 2-point conversion. It's just, I want some responsibility for the team. That's what I want. A little bit of personal responsibility for the team. I'm not saying I take personal responsibility because I wasn't playing. It's just, they did a lot of things wrong offensively, and I'm not just going to excuse that and gloss over that.
Game on the line. Give me James Mitchell. No, I'm serious. That was awful. But I get it at the same time because, like, what other options did he have? James Mitchell, he tried to get him the football. Didn't work out. It is what it is. Why don't we rewind? Because you could bring up the James Mitchell play. But what about the play before halftime, the drive before halftime for the Lions there? I guess the second to last drive before halftime. Because that, to me, and this is the thing with Dan Campbell, and I want to say this really quickly. I think Dan Campbell is a good coach. I do. Like, I'm in full support of Dan Campbell. But things like this make me, it's a cause for concern for me. Because, and this is people's immediate defense, or for Dan Campbell as well. If he goes for it and he makes it, you're the first one to sit there and say, good job, Dan. And if he doesn't, you're the first to say, well, you're an idiot, Dan. No, that's not how I work. Regardless if it works or not, I already have an opinion about the decision. And I thought the decision before halftime, after they converted the fake punt to go for it, was idiotic. It was dumb. It was stupid. And that, to me, is a lack of a feel for the game. To me, it's 3-7. You take this time, not only you had to convert a damn fake punt to get down in field goal range. Like, it was 4th down, you convert a fake punt, you drive all the way down the field. You can't leave that drive with nothing. You can't. You have to show something for that drive. Take the 3. Take the field goal. Make it 6-7 going into halftime. That, to me, is dumb. You're on the road. Your defense is playing well, which is something we haven't not seen at much against a team like this all year, and you do that. And then if you kicked a field goal, we don't even talk about the referees botching the game. You won because you would have been up 3. So you would have had 3 more points. So to me, that's just a lack of a feel for the game to me. And that, yes, it's the regular season. It is what it is. But you can't go into the playoffs and do that. Because I'm telling you one thing, for all the people that come at me or come at anybody else that question, how dare you question anything Dan Campbell does? Well, I don't want to hear you complain when in a playoff environment, something like that costs you a playoff game. I don't want to hear you complain about it because I've been consistent. If it bothers me, I'll bring it up. And that decision before halftime was dumb, Sam. It was dumb.
Of course.
Outright dumb.
Of course it was. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't think I was specific enough on the whole 4 drives in Cowboy territory culminating in just 3 points. And that was the most egregious one of them all because it came off of, I think, the Lions saving the game in that point when Kendall Vildor forced CeeDee Lamb to fumble out the back of the end zone when the Cowboys were going in for a touchdown that would have put them ahead 14-3. Instead, the Cowboys were only up 7-3, and the Lions got the ball back as a touchback, and then they did on that drive. They converted a 4th and 2 fake punt, which was absolutely huge. But here's how that drive ultimately ended: the Lions had 1st and goal at the Cowboys 2 and ended up with nothing. That's not okay. And that's why I say for people who are harping on the refs too much, and by the way, it was bad. It was really, really bad. You can't expect to go into Dallas and do that and win that game. And oh, by the way, that wasn't the only one. On one of the drives, the Lions were 2nd and 4 at the Cowboys 36, and on the next 2 plays, they lost 11 yards. And they were 1st and 10 at the Dallas 38, and the other one, and Jared Goff threw that interception. That's the thing. They had a chance in the first half to go into halftime with a lead, or maybe even a multiple score lead because of the way that they forced turnovers and the way that the Lions were able to pretty much move the ball to some extent, but the Lions just could not take advantage. And that 4th down from the 4-yard line, that was the worst of them all. They ended up with 0 points. That's just demoralizing. It's unacceptable.
Sam Flannel, it was an 11-play drive. It was an 11-play drive, including a conversion of a fake punt. You converted a fake punt.
Yes.
And you leave with nothing.
Nothing.
You can't leave that drive with 0 points for how hard you worked, and all the players worked to get downfield. Even on the 1 yard, even though they didn't get a touchdown, that's fine. You take the 3. And I want to read some of these comments here because just to give my response to this. Funky, if they kick that field goal, it changes the whole game. Dallas wouldn't have started the drive at the 4. People think it would have just as simple as if they kick here, they win. It's not. I'm not saying guarantee a win, but let's just be real here. Funky, they allowed 7 in the first half, and if you kick that field goal, you're up 3. I get it. They wouldn't have started where they started with the football, but your defense, again, that's feel for the game. Analytics doesn't have that. Analytics doesn't allow you to have feel for the game. It gives you percentages. If you do this, the percentage of you winning is this. Feel for the game is different. And Dan Campbell, you cannot convince me he has not been in the NFL as a player, as an assistant coach, and as a coach long enough to understand that.